up yet. Give me a second.
And then they stopped doing it. You guys have got what, 5 years?
Yeah.
4 years under your belt, something like that? That's impressive.
Thank you. Since 2019, I believe we were.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Over 200 shows. I know that.
Yeah, we've thought about giving up, but we're too old to set in our ways.
Well, look, man, there's something to be said for just being consistent with this stuff.
Welcome, everybody, to the Seattle Sports Union podcast. My name is Abraham DeWeese. I'm back again with the Soulman, Brian Solack, and our producer, Matthew Paige. And we have today a very special guest, the Gasman, Mike Gastineau. Welcome back, Gasman.
I was busy making important notes for the show over here, so I'd sound somewhat intelligent. But yeah, thanks. It's great to be back, guys. And congratulations on your nice long run. You've been around for a while, and the last couple of weeks, I really enjoyed I love the show with Jeff Aaron. He's such a delightful guy to talk to, and Puck's always fun. Anyway, and I know, what's his name? Grosby? Gross? He's been on here, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
The Gross man?
What's he doing these days?
He's got a special Grazo Gas show. Tell us about that. What's it like to be back in the air, even if it's just one show a week? I mean, I think it's pretty freaking cool.
Well, it's funny. The genesis of it, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, Dave and I would talk on the phone at least once a week, usually twice a week, about nothing, very much like our show, just babbling on about stuff that was going on. And then Dave found, Twitter had that thing called Twitter Spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave said, God, this would be great because it's really easy and it doesn't have a video component, so we don't have to worry about that. And I said, yeah, as long as we're talking, we might as well just throw it out there and see what happens. And we didn't have any interest in, heavily branding it or sponsoring or anything. We just want to have fun and talk. We like talking to each other. That's the thing we miss the most, is doing that kind of thing. And then little by little, Twitter just, faded so much in terms of relevance and in terms of, a lot of things. And so we started exploring some other ideas, and this is the best part. So I said to Dave, let's up our game a little bit. Let's put a video component in, and let's do a little more, because we might as well. We're putting the work in. And so I called Jason Puckett, our old colleague at KJR, who has left KJR and has formed a podcast and is doing all kinds of stuff. I said, hey, look, it's just like the old days, Puck. We're good at doing the show. We're not good at anything else. So I'm sure I could figure out how to post-produce it and how to distribute it, how to get it onto all the sites. But could you do that for us? And he goes, yeah, sure. He goes, it takes like 3 minutes. Yeah, that sounds like way more time than I have in my day. Puck, that's why we kind of joke that, Puck is our worldwide distributor and legal advisor. And we're up once a week on all the, every place you get podcasts. And it's just us kind of doing our old show a little bit, but only about 20 minutes. We're big into brevity these days because we get tired and bored.
I got a question for you, Gasman. When you and Graz and the whole gang back in the 90s, the fishermen, like you were talking about, Jeff Aaron, et cetera, when you guys came in, it seemed like to me like a brand new industry, sports radio. Maybe they had it on the East Coast before we did here in Seattle. But did you expect it to go the way that it has, and in becoming so popular and becoming entertainment, so to speak, rather than just reporting the news?
Right. Well, it's a big question. The first time I heard sports talk radio, I was living on the East Coast. I was doing games at James Madison University, and we drove up for a game in Providence, Rhode Island, a basketball game, and we dialed up WFAN in New York, this new, all sports format. And I remember they were interviewing the Jets kicker, and I don't even remember who it was, but they got the Jets kicker. And I'm thinking to myself, who the hell cares or wants to hear what the Jets kicker thinks about anything? And I thought it was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard. I knew that sports talk shows could work because I'd grown up in the Midwest, and a lot of the AM signals in the Midwest at night, they'd have a sports talk guy for a couple hours. But an entire station dedicated to it, 24-hour programming dedicated to it, I'll be honest, and I ended up being proven wrong. I did not see that being viable. And even when I moved to Seattle, and I knew they were eventually, I arrived, I think, in June of 91, and I knew they were getting ready to go to the all sports format, and that's why they hired me and they brought me in. And I still thought, this is going to be 3-4 years tops, and nothing against Seattle. I just thought this format isn't going to last anywhere. People are going to get bored with it. And something happened in November of 1991. So we flipped all sports like October of 91. Now, by then, Graz is on for 4 hours. We'd hired the sports babe. She's on for 3 hours. We were doing like 7 or 8 straight hours of sports, and then we were doing other stuff for the rest of the day. And then in October of 91, we flipped to all sports. We're going to be all sports from like 6 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. And I don't even know what we did overnight. But we're going to be all sports. And I'm thinking it's never going to work. November of 1991, 1 month into it, Magic Johnson announced he was HIV positive.
Right.
And it was an incredibly busy day at the station. We were getting our phones, I think we had 7 phone lines, and they were jammed all day. And we had, nonstop calls. People who were coming on saying, I'm HIV positive. This isn't going to be a death sentence. There's ways they can treat it now. People coming on excoriating him and his lifestyle, all sides of the spectrum. And by the end of the day, I remember thinking sports talk radio isn't going to be about sports. It's going to be about life and how it infringes on it and everything. And I mean, I changed my entire opinion of it. I came home and I think this is going to work because this is, things like this are going to happen. Fortunately, most of them not as dramatic as that one. And fortunately, the guys who called us that day, and I mean, just think about it. In 1991, a guy calling a radio station. Now, he didn't know who he was, but calling a station saying, hey, Mike, I'm HIV positive. You need to know that they can treat this now. It's going to be okay. And hearing that come out of somebody, like someone admitting it, is so many stigmas and walls were getting broken down that day, and not just in our place, all over the country, obviously. I always pointed to that, at least for KJR and kind of for me, as the day I kind of realized this is going to work. This is going to be a thing, because the other thing I said that day that occasionally you pull out a line, and I hate to keep saying, this was, on this horrible, tragic day, but I came up with a line that day that I thought was an important thing to say, and I think it just fell out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh, wow, that sounded smart. I said, now everyone knows someone with AIDS.
Yes,
that was the big thing, and I still get the terminology confused of HIV, but I use the word as now everyone. You can't say, oh, I don't know anybody with that. You can't dismiss it anymore as if it just happens to other people, not anybody in my friend group, which is such a joke, and we all know now looking back. But that was the day that equalized it for a lot of people.
It is. You've touched right exactly on it, because I remember exactly where I was listening to your station, KJR, and I was walking from North Seattle Community College, Northgate State, back to my apartment, and that's exactly what it was. I had never known anybody. It was a situation that was so disassociated from anything or anybody I knew, and it became real, even though it had been real for a decade prior.
And how could it be this guy, the guy with the 1,000,000-watt smile and the NBA championships and the LA lifestyle? How could that happen? And again, all of a sudden now everyone realized, look, this thing is out there, man, and it's out there, and that we've got to put money into treating it and money into researching it. And that's, that was, people say, that they want to use sports as an escape from life. And I get it. And oftentimes it is, but there are times where it becomes something that kind of steamrolls its way down everyone's life. And that was one of them.
Right.
I want to, before we continue on with sports, I want to ask you about one of your books that you wrote, Mr. Townsend and the Polish Prince.
Yeah.
I know you guys can't see it, but you will see it when the podcast is posted.
Hopefully for a good long time. Put that up there for a long time.
You got it. When's it gonna be in the movies?
Gosh, we've worked so hard and tried so hard, and we've hit a lot of dead ends. We're still trying. And you never know, it's one of the things I kind of, when you watch the Oscars every year, there's people that win awards that go, it took 15 years to get this made into a movie. And I'm like, God, really? Well, now I'm seeing why, because you talk about the stars having to align. And we had a guy that we thought was going to, and he did. So we thought he was going to help us. He did help us, but he just also kind of got to some dead ends, and it costs a lot of money. People don't want to invest money unless they think they're getting their money back. The movie business is harder and harder anymore to make money in because of all the obvious things. So It's a cool story. For those who don't know, it's about a guy named Joe Perzicki, who it's a true story. 1980, he was hired by a gentleman named Nelson Townsend, who was the athletic director at Delaware State College at the time, the Del State University now. And Nelson hired Joe to be the football coach after Del State had lost a game 105-0 to Neil Lomax and the Portland State Vikings.
Oh.
And in the wake of that, they hired Joe, and the story was Joe was the first white head football coach at a historically black college and university. So it's a book about Nelson walking Joe through the things he was going to need to learn. It's a story about Joe, who is one of these guys who had grown up playing sports, in an integrated school system. Joe was not from a life of privilege. Joe knew something of the culture and what he was getting into, but he didn't know it all, and he didn't expect the pushback that he got. And he got a lot of pushback. So it's about him winning the players over. It's about the players winning themselves over and kind of showing him how some things are. And it's ultimately about a team that started winning. It's a real cool story, and I'd love, just for Joe's sake, because it's his story, to get it made into a movie. If either of you guys is sitting on about, several $1 million, or somebody who's sitting on several $1 million that's dying to make a movie, send them my way, and we'll get that cash burn started.
We will check between the couch cushions immediately after this show.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a book. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
What this kind of reminds me of is, I don't know if you guys remember the 70s movie White Tiger at Grambling or something like that. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
It sounds familiar. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So when did this story take place? Was it the 60s or 70s?
1980. He gets hired in December of 1980, and then he's there for 4 years, 81, 82, 83, 84. They're terrible the first 2 years. Yeah, he's dealing with death threats. Somebody threw a brick through his office window. I mean, he dealt with an awful lot. And every time he was ready to kind of throw in the towel, Nelson was there saying, "No, you're not." Says, you think this is hard? Let me tell you what I've been through. And Nelson was, an African-American who came of age in the 50s. He had dealt with a lot more than Joe was dealing with. And
right.
So it's that story too. And just their friendship lasted forever until Nelson passed away. I'm real proud of. I love all. I'm very proud of all the books I've done. It's been an interesting second career for me. And the Husky book is so cool and so personal to people up here, and so is the Sounders book, which continues to sell 12 years after it was released. But the Little Engine That Could, the little punk rock book that I wrote is Mr. Townsend and the Polish Prince, and it stands on its own merit. It's a hell of a story, and I just was lucky to get to write it.
Awesome. And Delaware State, they're the Blue Hens?
That's Delaware. Very good, though.
Delaware.
It's not bad. You had a 50-50 chance. Delaware State is they're the Hornets.
Hornets. Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, they're and they're still scrapping and struggling. It's hard at that level where it's the old Division I AA. Now it's the football championship subdivision. Right. And it's getting tougher and tougher to make a go of that in that league because so much money. College football is so top heavy with money right now. That it's harder for smaller schools to really make a go of it.
Okay, let's talk about that. You've had a couple years to ruminate on this, and he of the Fear No Man book that you wrote about John James. Has college football lost its shine for you at all, or is it just what it is?
I'll answer it two ways. I don't know that you can find 8 hours of more entertaining sports than last Saturday when Georgia and Tennessee played and then Notre Dame and Texas A&M played. I mean, that was great football in exciting atmospheres and twists in the plot and ups and downs. And so the games always end up saving sports from its idiocy. I hate what's happened in the sport. I don't mind the players getting paid. I don't mind that at all. And the NCAA had 25 years to figure out a way to do that and just kept ignoring it. Yeah. And so the courts ended up coming up with a plan, which doesn't work perfectly. But you know what? It's the administrators and the unbelievable lack of leadership within college football that led to that. So I don't mind the players getting paid. I hate, and this is going to sound so naive, I was in the business, I understand why, but the influence that TV has right now, the fact that Fox and ESPN basically and somewhat gleefully destroyed West Coast football. Just said, screw it, screw the traditions, screw the fans, screw the rivalries. we can make more money going this direction, so we're going to do it. And then people get mad at USC and UCLA. They get mad at Washington and Oregon, and I get that. And like for the Cougars, it breaks my heart to see what happened to that program. And Oregon State, the same thing. And who knows where the new bottom is going to be, and maybe they're going to ultimately be okay. It's hard to say with as fast as everything changes. But just the fact that all of that was destroyed in the name of money and in the name of greed. And, I would think now that Fox and ESPN and the Big Ten and the SEC probably got their eyes on either the Big 12 or the ACC, saying we can do the same thing. Let's go get them and get all that money. So I lament that, quite a bit, just those kinds of changes within the game. But I still do love the game. So maybe I'm a hypocrite. I mean, I still, Illinois and Indiana are playing. It's the biggest game in Indiana's, history in quite some time. First time I think in 40 years they've had a top 20 matchup in their stadium. 4:00 Saturday. I know where I'm going to be. I'm not going to be worried about everything that happened. I'm going to be watching that game because the game.
Because you
I'm
are
a fan.
an Indiana grad, right?
Yeah, I'm an Indiana grad, and I'm just a fan. And I mean, and I'll be dialing over to the Apple Cup for the same reasons. I want to see what's going on in this game. I used to laugh. It was amazing to me. Baseball canceled a World Series. They canceled a World Series, and they survived it because the games. They came back, and the games were so good and so compelling, and it was 1995, and I think we all know what happened that year. There was so much great baseball in the postseason, and everybody forgot that a year earlier, baseball basically gave the fans the bird and said, we're just not going to play the World Series. We'll teach the players. So sports steps on itself more often than any other business, but they've got the games to save them. The dumb stuff that happens in the NFL, then the games start and we don't care because we like to gamble and we like watching football. So the games always save sports. The one thing I'll say about college football, and like I'll give the NFL credit, they've at least got leadership. They don't always do the right things, but there is a leadership structure within pro football. College football right now reminds me of boxing. Remember, boxing was the biggest sport in this country in the 50s and even into the 60s, and it was still big in the 70s. Yeah. But little by little, it faded because there was no central leadership, and people lost faith in the sport and faith in what was going on. Same thing to a certain extent with horse racing. There's different leadership groups in each state and each thing. And college football, well, the SEC, what they do is one thing, what the Big Ten does is one thing, and Notre Dame's its own entity. And so there's no central governing body, and that's what's led, I think, to a lot of this chaos. How's that for a long answer?
Does Wazoo have a chance of at least beating the spread on Saturday? And remember, Puckett's listening, so choose your words wisely.
Well, Puck's not listening. The happy hour ended an hour ago. Puck's under a table somewhere. Yeah, absolutely they do. I'll say this. I think Washington's going to win, and it won't surprise me if they cover the spread. But let's remember, and I know a lot has changed in a year, but a year ago, Washington State won this game. This isn't like it's 20 years since the Cougars ever won an Apple Cup, and I know, I have no idea what the Cougars are. I mean, they struggle to beat Idaho, beat, San Diego State. I mean, I don't care how good or bad they are this season. That's a football program with scholarships, and they compete. They're in postseason a lot of years. They go down to North Texas. I mean, good Lord, how did they get beat that bad? And all the confusion with their quarterback. We're going to have tryouts. No, we're not. We're not sure what we're doing.
Yeah.
They don't look like this guy looks like he's a little over his skis right now. That doesn't mean he can't recover. But I think the Huskies, I kind of like the Huskies. I like big. But if you say, do they have a chance? Sure they do. And funny how those crafty odds makers are always pretty darn close with what's going to happen.
Very true. Yep.
Do you getting back to college football here for a second? Do you find yourself missing the bowls at all? That's one thing that you can touch on.
Interesting thing. I watched a lot of bowls last year, and we did I'm one of the national editors for Lindy's College Football Preview magazine. I work with my old friend Don Borst on that project every May, and it's fun to immerse yourself in college football in May when nobody's thinking about it. And, we were looking at stuff, and one of the notes that we put in our magazine this year was, everybody was worried that the playoff would suck all the interest out of the bowl, that no one would care about the other bowl games. The other bowl games last year, ratings were up, and like 8% or something, like a pretty decent number, not just 1%. They were up a significant percentage. I don't know if that'll happen every year, but here's why I've always thought the bowl games are going to be okay. Maybe there's too many of them. Maybe some of them are going to fade, although ESPN owns all of them because they want TV programming in the holidays. So they don't really care who goes. They just want ratings at that time. let's look at Washington, the Huskies this year. They look okay. We don't know. They haven't played anybody yet, but they look like a pretty decent team. I don't think they necessarily look like a college football playoff team. Maybe they'll surprise us. But I think they could win 8 or 9 games, in which case they might get, I don't even know who knows where the hell the teams go for bowl games anymore. But if they win 9 games and go to a pretty good bowl somewhere and play, I don't know, I'll just pull somebody out of thin air. Let's say they play Tennessee from the SEC. Well, that's a compelling game. And if it's in San Diego or if it's in Dallas, I think people would travel. But more than that, I think people would be interested on TV, not just in Tennessee and Washington, but in other places as well. There's always going to be bowl games where you've never heard of the bowl and you've never heard of the company sponsoring it and you barely know the two schools playing. But there's plenty of bowl games that are going to be between schools and schools you have some kind of a tie to, and it's compelling football. So I think they're going to be okay.
That was a great example because last year the Huskies played Louisville in Sun Bowl, and it was down to the last.
It's a great game. It's a great game to watch, a fun game to watch, and and I think they'll always be there. And there'll be other games, like I said, midway through the second quarter, you go, this is boring. I'm going to go watch one of the other 14 bowl games that are on.
I know we want to talk Mariners and Seahawks, but I want to talk about the Sonics. Let's start with Gus Williams and Slick Watts. We lost 2 of the greatest Sonics ever to play the game this last year.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that? Do you have any personal memory to share?
I didn't know Gus. I think I might have met him once, but I knew Slick, like anybody in Seattle. If you live in Seattle, you knew Slick Watts because when you met him, you felt like you'd known him forever. And I know Donald obviously very well, and I love the family, and I loved Slick's attitude and what a cheerful soul he was until he had the stroke. And I miss him, and I told this story often before, and this really will pull your heartstrings a little bit. The day the big barista Howard Schultz sold the Sonics, gave them away to Oklahoma City, that day. And I think it wasn't the day they sold it. It was the day they announced that that they were dropping the lawsuit and that they were definitely moving. Gus and I were doing our show at FX McCrory's that day for a baseball pregame. And at 3:00 at FX McCrory's, when we'd start, there'd be nobody there. Nobody's in the bar at 3:00. People start coming in for the baseball game around 4:30. So it was just me and Graz and the bartenders and people getting the restaurant ready. And at about 3:01, I mean, we're on the air a minute, and I look up, and here comes Slick Watts walking in. And he's the one who used the line, but I mean, it looked like there'd been a death in the family. Slick comes walking over, and he doesn't even ask, can I come on the air? He grabs a headset, sits down, and just looks at us. And that's why I said to Slick, what are you feeling? He goes, it feels like somebody died. And it broke my heart. And there's that whole level of thing. I mean, for the fans, I've always been heartbroken. For the old players, for George Karl, who's burning to get this team back just because he wants to come back and see a Sonics game in Seattle because he was so connected to this franchise. For Detlef, for Sean, for Gary, all these guys. Sean and Gary should have the jerseys retired, and God bless them. They've turned down the Thunder. Said, no, I didn't play in Oklahoma City. I'm not going down there to get my jersey retired. I played in Seattle. I'm just so pessimistic now, guys. I did the Iconic Sonics podcast for a while, and I stepped away from that very amicably. I love, and they're still doing it, and good for them. I just told myself I've kind of run out of stuff to say. I mean, at some point, it reminds me of like, and we probably, just based on the looks of the people on this show tonight, me, you guys, we probably all are familiar with back in high school trying to get a pretty girl to go out with us and having her say no 58 times.
Yeah.
That's what this reminds me of. Like the Sonics are like, at some point you go, well, you know what? I wouldn't go out with you anyway. You're being a jerk to me. Well, I think the Sonics are like that. They're like, God, what more do I have to do? I'm sitting here at the bar saying, please take me home. And no, the NBA, no. All right. You know what? Well, then I'm just not going to care anymore. I sure hope they come back, and I'll be excited if they do. And I'm especially excited for the fans. But the last, and even before the statements of this year, I just started. I'll tell you, a big moment when I lost some steam for this was about 2.5 years ago when they did an NBA exhibition game here. I think it was the Clippers and the Jazz, I think is who was here. And Ballmer got on the PA before the game. And I like Steve. Steve's, he's always been nice to me. But he said something that pissed me off that night on the PA. He says, it's great to be here in Seattle. He's doing the big loud scream that he does. You guys are great fans. He goes, if you guys cheer loud enough, they might hear you in New York City, if you know what I mean. And I'm like, What are you talking about? This has never been about the fans not being loud enough or the fans not supporting the team. This has been about money and about short-sighted ownership and short-sighted elected officials. And it's insulting to me to have a billionaire stand there and say, if you guys yell loud and jump up and down and make a lot of noise, screw that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this city, I don't get caught up in me because what I deserve, who cares? This city deserves more from the NBA than it's gotten, and it certainly does not deserve a guy standing there yelling, hey, jump up and down like a bunch of trained animals and maybe we'll give you what you want. That night, I walked out of the arena and I'm like, I'm kind of done with beating the drum for this. I hope it happens. But these people, they're insulting beyond. I'd rather they just say, yeah, we don't think we're coming back to Seattle, or and instead of, yeah, we might, but we might look at Mexico City or maybe Montreal. And I'm like, all right, do whatever you want, man. I'm kind of tired of fighting it. But I'll circle back around and say that doesn't mean I don't want it to happen. It's just eventually you decide, all right, I don't have any more emotional capital to put into this.
It's weird because I have a son. So do you, Solack, and all the kids of this generation, they don't get it that in the 90s, the Sonics were the team in this city. Like, Mariners somewhat, but
No, it was true. The Sonics owned the city. And the Mariners came along and they had a nice run. They kind of took it. But the Sonics there for about a 5 or 6 year stretch, it was the hottest ticket in town. Everybody wanted to go. Everybody, they were grand. No coincidence. They were great. They were winning 60 games a year and beating the hell out of teams that would come in here on long West Coast swings. And it was fun, man. That was a fun time.
Since we're talking basketball, Lenny Wilkins got a statue. Mm-hmm. Super just got a statue. Yep. Who should be the next basketball legend in this town to get a statue?
Here's something. I forget. Maybe it was Gross who brought this up. We'll give Gross credit. Why not? How's it possible there's not a Seahawks player statue outside that stadium? Mariners have 3 or 4, right? They got Ichiro, they got Edgar, they got Junior, and they got Dave Niehaus. Yeah. Ichiro's isn't done yet. Now we got Lenny and Sue, although I don't recognize the Sue one because she's not wearing a broken nose bandage, so I wasn't sure it was her. I think hers maybe looks more like her than any of the others look like anybody else. So Don James and Jim Owens up at UW. How do the Seahawks not have player immortalized in a statue outside the stadium? There's a thought for you. Why don't you guys get to work on that? Bring Condota on and do a big investigative piece on that.
I love that idea. Our producer Matt Paige says a good old Mudbone Dave Craig statue would be great.
Well, with the ball maybe squirting away from him, that'd be awesome. I didn't mean that, Dave. That's a real cheap comment, for Pete's sake. Walter certainly would be a guy you'd think of first, maybe. It's got to be a Hall of Famer. Largent, maybe you go with Largent since he was the first.
You wouldn't go with the
superstar?
The Richard Sherman Tip?
I don't know. I mean, Richard Sherman Tip, if we're just talking a play, but in terms of player impact and Hall of Fame caliber guys, I would look towards Walter because I saw his whole career, and I love Largent, but I saw his career on TV. Walter Jones was fun to watch every game, man. He was one of those guys that he was drafted and then did his job for 16 years and then didn't, and then let, you just never came out of there going, oh, Walter really had a bad day today, didn't he? It was blowing around him.
Fewer holding penalties than years played in the NFL.
I didn't know that. If I did, I'd forgotten it. That's amazing. That's a great stat. I don't know. Is there another basketball player that it almost feels like Gary and Sean, if they did it, should be linked a little bit, but maybe Gary. I mean, I loved Sean, but maybe Gary is an overall, I don't know. I don't want to say better player. I love Sean too much to say that, but I think it's appropriate that Lenny was first. I'll say this. I think it's very appropriate that they didn't wait 5 years for Sue. It's like, well, let's get her done too, because her career is unbelievable when you look at all the stuff she accomplished. And my favorite stat with her is 4 championships with 4 different coaches.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
That says something and I also love that I don't think, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, she never led the league in anything. Statistically, she just led the league in being great and developing a winning attitude, holding her team together. She might have led, I don't know, maybe there was one statistical category at some point, but you know what I mean? She was not a player who was defined by her numbers. She was defined by her greatness more and just her consistency and her toughness, playing with those broken noses all the time. And she's one of my favorite athletes all the time. I loved watching her play and watching her compete. And so I'm glad the way it worked out. Here's our statue. Let's do one. And it could just be a giant mouth, and it could be Calabro, and all it is just a mouth. And it could double as a foghorn. You could put a thing on that they could blow it as a foghorn when it's foggy outside the arena after the game, so people can steer clear of trouble. So let's do one for my pal KC.
How about Casey and Blackbird, like just side by side?
And you know what? I always shortchange Bob because, again, I got here and it was right at the end of his career, and I tend to forget sometimes. Yeah, Bob's has a connection, and they work together, so it wouldn't be that far fetched. Kevin and Bob worked together for a couple of years, and Bob called a championship, so you can't forget him if you're going to honor the announcers, no doubt.
And Pete Gross deserves it for the Seahawks. I have to throw that in there.
So now he does have his he has his mic up in the Ring of Fame.
Yeah, that's kind of as a Ring of Honor. Pete Pete was such a neat guy, and I didn't get to know him that well, but I was here. I know him for about a year and a half. I want to say had a daughter who went to school at James Madison University, where I had moved to Seattle from, and there was a sandwich joint in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where the school's located, called Spanky's. And just like a classic college town sandwich joint, 70 sandwiches on the menu, all, made with all kinds of good stuff. Whenever I'd see Pete, he'd go, "Hey, have you been to Spanky's lately?" I mean, he loved Spanky's. Like every time he went and saw his daughter, he'd go to Spanky's and get a sandwich. Delightful guy, just an absolute delightful guy, and gone far too soon.
Yep. Well, how about let's move on to the Mariners. I mean, what are your thoughts? Are we going to have a World Series run, or are we going to make the playoffs?
Well, hang on. Let me refine that question. We are 54% right now, Gasman.
To get to the World Series?
No. We're at the magical 54% wins and losses mark. Oh. The one that Dipoto guaranteed that we'd get a World
Series.
Alec,
you. Yeah, that was a dumb thing to say, wasn't it? That was a classic example. You know what? His point was fine. You don't open your press conference with that. That day, how hard is it to open up the press conference with, well, first of all, I pledge to you that I'm going to work my ass off the entire next year to make sure I'm not here next year on this day, because we're going to be getting ready for the playoffs. I am so humiliated with the job I did, and I'm embarrassed, and we're never going to let this happen again. It's devastating to me. I know it's devastating to the family, blah, 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 blah. And then answer some questions. And then later in the press conference go, let me give you one little ray of sunshine here that we talk about. That we're being consistent. I believe you. But it's like the guy, I don't know. I don't think he talked to the communications pros that the Mariners have, because he just started babbling. And next thing you know, he's like, we went 54% of the games. Like, nobody gives a crap about that, pal. Not today. Not of all things today. So I'm glad we're at 54% now. I do think they're going to the, I'm getting crazy optimistic because I like being optimistic. It's more fun than being pessimistic. But I've liked the team all year. And then, you get into like May and you're like, Raleigh's having an incredible year here. This is really going to be something. Then they add the pieces they need. Their pitching went through a malaise there in August, but it seems to be bouncing back. I mean, as we're recording this, they just beat the Royals today. And Luis Castillo, that's the best news we've seen. Luis Castillo now 4 outings in a row has been lights out after an August where, I was questioning in August, like, man, if they make the playoffs, they're not going to use this guy. They won't even put him on the roster as bad as he looks. And then he gets himself squared away. I'm watching the Tigers fade. And I'm thinking, you know what? The Mariners could be the second best division record in the American League, which means they're the number 2 seed. They take the 3 division winners, and the first is the 1 seed, and the second best. Well, they could catch Detroit and or Cleveland if Cleveland wins that division, get ahead of them. Suddenly, you're number 2 seed. You get to skip a series. You get a bye. Get your pitching straight. You'll start at home. You'll have the home field advantage, which seems kind of important to this team. So why not dream big? It's funny. Obviously, this is gigantic with the Astros, and there'll be people watching this in a few days going, "Did you not see the Astros series?" But if they play well in Houston, if they can even take 2 out of 3 and just keep rolling, Detroit is collapsing. I mean, they are in free fall right now. There's no guarantee they won't get squared away. But if you're a Mariner fan, keep an eye on the Astros, because we know how nasty and dirty those guys are. But keep an eye on Detroit, too, because if you could rein them in and be number 2, think how big that'd be.
Yeah. Why aren't you the Mariners PR guy?
I should be, shouldn't I?
I'm all hyped now. I'm all hyped.
Their PR people know what they're doing. And look, you know what? You do have to give them some credit for what they've done this year, and they put together a good roster, and they went and got the guys that they needed to get at the trade deadline. But I fall into the camp. I've heard some other people say this. I mean, yeah, great move getting Suarez back. Pretty dumb move letting him go in the first place, wasn't it? Given what he did in Arizona, geez, what do you have 40 home runs last year? Those were like sprinkle those around the team last year. They might have helped out a little bit. It's maddening to me how short-sighted they are sometimes, because Suarez, you could just say, look, this guy, he's the clubhouse leader. 2 years ago, you could say he's fading a little bit. But you know what? Sometimes you hang on to those guys for cultural reasons rather than say, well, we can save $11 million. Let's get rid of him. And so good move getting him back. But, smarter move would have been not letting him go in the first place.
I agree.
And there's no guarantee he wasn't going to be a Haniger. I love Mitch Haniger. Yeah, we're going to let him go to San Francisco. And then you trade San Francisco a pitcher who's still got some tread on the tire. And Haniger comes back up here and doesn't know how to play baseball anymore. He's just old and he's hurt and he's banged up. They've had a lot of curious decisions over the years in that front office.
Yeah, you're talking about Ballmer, the billionaire. The Mariners have billionaires on their, in their ownership group. Why are they pinching pennies, when?
Well,
anyway.
I think it's a philosophical thing, and baseball more than any sport, since there's not a salary cap, there's no real constraints. You can run a baseball team one of two ways. You can run it like a ball club, or you can run it like a business. They choose to run it like a business. And what that means is they keep an eye on P&L every year. They keep an eye on what their expenses are. They're concerned with year-to-year budget and year-to-year money. That's how they want to run it. You run it like a ball club, you don't give a crap about any of that stuff. You pay what you need to pay, you get the guys you need to get, and you make your money when you sell the team. When you cash out, you get more than enough back to offset the problems. Teams don't get sold for less than they were purchased for. But the Mariners philosophically have a group of guys that want to run this like a business rather than like a ball club. And that's why they've spent so many years looking up in the standings, because they make decisions based on money this year rather than what's best to just continue the franchise's growth, because they're going to make their money either way, and they know that. That's what's maddening about it. They sell the team, they're going to make a ton of money on their investment.
So I'm going to disagree with you. You can run it like a business. You can run it like what was the other one? Run it like a club.
A ball club.
But you can also run it like the Bananas. The Savannah Bananas hit Seattle the next 2 days. Have you ever seen these guys?
I've seen video and seen stories on them, and it's fascinating to me, because when anybody is able to create a new avenue of entertainment, I'm impressed, because that's hard. The entertainment dollar is a hard dollar to get, and there's so much out there, so much competing for your time. And these guys, with all these goofy stunts and getting guys who are acrobats but can also obviously play baseball a little bit, and convincing them, how do I put this? I almost want to say convincing them to take it seriously. In other words, take the goofing off part of it for what it is. Have a fun time. Brace it. These guys, because you could see certainly some guys who thought they were going to be a big league ball player going, I'm kind of embarrassed by having to, do some of this silly stuff. None of their guys act like that, which I'm sure if you act like that, they're like, look, we're going to go ahead and let you go. I think it's fascinating. And I don't know that brand of baseball is going to become dominant in the next 20 years. Who knows? It might. I doubt it, but it can become a nice. I mean, shoot, the Harlem Globetrotters are how many years old, and they come through all the time, and they're doing the same corny gags that they were doing when I was a kid, and they work. They still work, and it's I think it's cool. So good for the Bananas.
Well, it's super popular with kids right now, and they actually play more Bananas games on ESPN than MLB baseball. So I guess there's something to it. I did not think that this was a good business model, but I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I'm proven wrong.
You know where it could end up. I mean, who knows where it could go, because they're on a big tour now and they're selling out wherever they go. And maybe they're going to be able to do that. Or maybe it becomes a part of Savannah culture, where you go to Savannah and you see this and you said, oh yeah, while you're here, you got to see a Bananas game. And you got to get out there, and maybe that can be it. I don't know what their plans are, but they can plan big right now, because they've got attention, and they're kind of the it thing right now a little bit. So I think it's cool. I'm not sure. I didn't have any interest in going to see them, but I know a lot of people do, and obviously they've sold out and everything. I wish them all the best, man. I think it's a cool thing when you can create a new avenue for entertainment.
Yeah. Barnstorming. Oh, I just wanted to ask one question. Sorry, Solack. Just one question about barnstorming used to be a thing, but I don't think it was ever about circus style entertainment, or like you said, Globetrotter style entertainment, right?
Right. No, it used to be you'd take the best baseball stars of the day in the days before TV, and they'd go out at the end of the season and go play a month of games in cities that didn't have major league teams. So you'd see them play, or they'd do a foreign tour. It used to be that spring training teams, they'd break camp, and as they'd work their way north, they'd play exhibition games in various minor league stadiums just to expose the game. They had to do more back then because there wasn't TV. They don't have to do as much of that anymore. And Soulman, let me say, I'm not sure why Abraham keeps cutting you out. He really is. He's put you
My
in a
bad.
box on this
My bad.
show. It's embarrassing to us all.
Well said.
I demand to be cut out of this interview.
Can you put it into the rumors then that Graz and Gas will be suiting up for the Savannah Bananas this weekend?
That'd be fantastic. I would suit up. I'd look like a fool. I haven't swung a bat in anger in 50 years. I'd do it. Maybe I'd be a manager or something. Graz could be a manager. That'd be fun. It sounds like the type of thing we'd have been up for back in our prime.
Absolutely. That would be fun.
Yeah.
I did hear, in case you guys haven't heard, I heard that Edgar Martinez will be suiting up this weekend.
Is that right?
Seattle. That's what I saw today.
For the Bananas? In the Bananas game?
Yeah, for the Bananas game, for representing the Seattle area.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll hit a double.
You never know.
I have an ongoing joke whenever they show Edgar in the dugout. I always text Graz. I go, what he's saying right now? He's saying, you guys should hit more doubles. I hit a double once and everybody got excited. Rather than telling him to just hit a two-bagger, man. Get out there. They called me Dr. Double.
Moving on, we've got to talk about the Seahawks real quick. So far, they're off to 1-1 start. I would have thought they would have beat the Niners and would have lost this past weekend in Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly that. I thought they'd be 1-1, and I thought we'd be talking about a nice win over the Niners and a loss to Pittsburgh. It just shows you how still to this day, and it's one of the big things they've got going for themselves, how unbelievably unpredictable the NFL is. Mm-hmm. You watch how the Hawks played against the Niners, and now they're going out to Pittsburgh. They're playing their former wide receiver, who he can say all he wants about it was just another game. He wants to burn him. They're playing a quarterback who just burned his old team, the Jets, so he's got to be sky high. They're going into one of the toughest buildings in the league to play. Pittsburgh's a good team. They're always well coached with Tomlin. Come on. And they go in and they got a couple of breaks and all that. And I don't know, I would say they dominated. I mean, they a couple things go the other way and maybe not, but that's the NFL, man. That's how it goes. I like that they say they want to run the ball and they're staying committed to that. They're 15th in the, it's only 2 weeks in, but they're 15th in the league in rushing. So plenty of room for improvement. But I always find it funny when a team spends all training camp going, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. And then they start the year and they're like, you guys are dead last in rushing you're not committed to this at all. So I like that. And, but I have no idea. What's going to happen this weekend? Don't ask me, man. It's the NFL. It's how they sell the tickets, is because, they're a touchdown favorite and a lot of the money's on them. But, if they look as tentative as they did against the Niners, they'll struggle.
Great.
Hey, Soulman, we're getting towards the end of the show, but I know you have a Four Horsemen question.
Yes.
Four Horsemen.
I want to hear this one.
I have a million questions, but yes, we're going to go with the Four Horsemen question.
All right.
Graz and Gas, J. Michael Kenyon, and Wayne Cody are the Four Horsemen of Seattle broadcasting.
Well, I'll take that. If I'm on that list, wow. Kenyon and Cody are absolute legends, and Graz and I are, whatever we were. But yeah, I'll accept that honor on behalf of Graz.
What made that era so special? I mean, you guys are freaking amazing, and I mean, tell the kids who don't know jack about that era why that's an amazing group of four right there.
Well, so man, for Graz and I, it was just pure talent. We just ran on. No, I'll tell you what made that era special for us is Graz and I had a chemistry unlike anything I ever experienced in my life. I mean, when we knew it from the start and we never talked about it. We rarely had show meetings, which frustrated me because I'm a little more organized than Dave is. And I don't mean that as a slam. It's just our personalities are like that. But it worked. And we knew what was funny. We knew what was working. We very rarely showed each other up on the air. I mean, we'd have fun. But we had each other's backs. We had tremendous management and support, and the world was different then. You could say stuff back then without thinking, am I going to get in trouble, or am I going to get, is the internet Greek chorus going to jump my attitude? I mean, it's just, I don't think you could do what KJR did in the 90s and the aughts today. I don't think you could do it at all. I don't think any of the personalities would survive at all, because we were allowed to say things. And we also, I think, and it's hard to speak for everybody here, but in the case of Graz and I, we didn't abuse that. We basically were told, you guys can say and do what you want. And so we were like, okay, well, let's not screw that part of it up by doing something stupid. And that was a part of it. It helped that, the Seattle sports was really in a great spot during that time. Usually in most cities, at least one team's going well. And we had a stretch there where the Sonics are going great. The Huskies won a national championship right before that. The Seahawks bring in Mike Holmgren to get it going. The Mariners have the run with Lou Piniella. Yeah, I've always joked too. Part of what made that station compelling was we had about a 6-year stretch where we had Lou, George, and Mike Holmgren.
Yeah.
And that's 3 pretty large personalities to have as coaches, and they were fun. And I mean, I think they kind of all got what we did. And George was ready to fight all of us all the time, and scrappy and typical of himself. And Lou was kind of bemused, but we can get pissed at you, he'd let you have it. And Holmgren was kind of the same way. I don't know if Mike ever got mad at us, but Mike was just, and again, he kind of got who we were. And especially when the Ackerleys owned us, when the Ackerley family owned the stations, it really was a glory time, because they understood broadcasting, they understood talent, and they were, I loved working for the Ackerleys. iHeartMedia came in and or whatever, their Clear Channel at the time. For a while, they left us alone, which was great. But as soon as they started jerking around with us, I'm like, all right, the end is near here, because they break everything they touch, and they've got a nice 30-year track record of that, of just not understanding that talent costs money, and you've got to pay that money. But and the listeners, that they hung with us and stayed with us. It really was. I know Jeff Aaron was talking about this too the other night. It was a special time, and we all know that, all of us. We had the great fortune of we had a bunch of different guys in the morning, and they were all good guys. And then when Mitch landed there, he understood how to do a morning show. And if you're going to be anything in the radio business in any format at all, you've got to have a good morning show. You have to. If you don't, you'll never build any numbers through the day. And Mitch landing there and getting his legs under him and being very good at what he did, and all the other personalities, the Sonics being good helped us, and on and on. It was a very, very special time for me, and I look back on it just with incredible fondness. And I miss it primarily because I was 30 years younger when it was happening, and I've felt better most of the days. We all, I think I could speak for everybody. We all appreciate what we had then, and it really was. It was like a fraternity almost on wheels. I mean, we just had a lot of fun. We led the league in fun, and we got away with an awful lot. That's great. Man. We got away with a ton of stuff.
That's awesome.
Hey, Soulman, you got the last question, since I kind of dominated the middle there. My bad. But
I love pointing that out. I love being a guest that's just such a jackass that he's pointing things out like that. What an idiot.
I'll let them scream shame at me and whip me through the town.
Please
town
do.
Square. So Soulman, yeah, I'll let you get the last one here.
I thought about this. Please share a story about Grosby that nobody's maybe heard of, if you're allowed to.
Wow,
that would be so cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, one that nobody's. Dave and I used to. It was funny. We probably did more fun stuff when he was over at Cairo. In other words, like when we're working at KJR, we're seeing each other a lot. And when the show was over, we'd usually go our separate ways. You're kind of tired of somebody after spending 3 or 4 hours with them, and maybe an hour beforehand in meetings. And then he, from 92 to 94, he went over to Cairo and was over there doing like a sports talk show at night. And I mean, they brought him over. It's he's told the story before. They brought him over to do the Seahawks games. And then he gets there and, like, actually, we don't have any control over who does the Seahawks games. They basically lied to get him over there. But they said, they go, listen, but you know what? How would you like to be the voice of the Washington State Cougars? And Graz goes, yeah, sure. He goes, well, the guy we got is Bob Robinson, and he's great, and everybody loves him, but he's getting ready to retire. This is 1992. He's getting ready to retire. He's not going to last more than a couple more years, and he'll be done. And then we'll put you in. You'll be the. And Graz really wanted to be a play-by-play guy, to the point where he did the Seattle U games for a while and had a ton of fun doing that. So he's all excited. He called me. He says, "Yeah, I think I'm going to be the voice of the Cougars." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. I am. I knew Bob, but I mean, I kind of thought the same thing. Any reasonable person would assume, well, Bob's getting ready to retire." Well, as Grosdell later says, he says, "Well, they were only 25 years off on when he was going to retire." From that gig. And along the way, Gros got the Seattle U job. And I always wanted them to make the NCAA tournament just because I knew it would mean so much to him and he'd have so much fun. But here's one story for you that I don't think people have heard is that I had left KJR and left radio and was making millions of dollars writing books. And Dave calls me one time. He says, "Hey, I got a road trip that Gary Hill, who's now the Mariners broadcaster." Gary was Gros's color announcer for Seattle U and also his engineer. He knew how to set up the equipment, did all that. And Dave knew how to do that too. But he's, you want some companionship on the road. And two voices are usually better than one. So he says, "Gary can't make this trip. And I'm wondering if you'd like to make it." And I'm like, "Well, what, just be your analyst?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "God, that really sounds like a blast." And then my first question is, so how much does the Grosby Broadcasting Corporation pay for and he paid me a little bit. He paid me like what he paid Gary, which was nice. But more than that, and like this is all going on. And I hung up and I told Renee, I said, I'm going to go on a road trip with Gros. She goes, "Where are you going?" And I go, "I don't know." I never asked him. So I call him back. I said, "Hey, where the hell are we going?" He goes, "McAllen, Texas, and Las Cruces, New Mexico." Oh, geez. You couldn't have said like Portland and San Francisco or something where we're going to stay in the same. And we had such a fun time on that trip. And that really was a blast. It's funny when you work together, and again, Dave and I loved each other and we had great chemistry, but we were also competitive with each other. And there was pressure, there was stress to what we were doing. You wanted to deliver ratings and you wanted to keep people happy and keep sponsors happy. This trip, there was none of that. That all just faded away. I'm not saying we didn't give a crap. We wanted the broadcast to be good, but nobody was trying to prove anything. And we actually did an in the news story in the middle of a Seattle U game. Our old Gros with Gas bit where I'd tell guys, we're like, it's like the second half. And I'm like, "Hey, Gros, you got time for an in the news story?" And he just, I said, "Well, yeah, sure." So like in between free throws and stuff, we told a story about a guy who was eluding police or trying to elude police, and he's weaving through traffic and stuff. And they eventually land a police helicopter and he crashes into it. And I was like, this guy had to be thinking, is that a helicopter in the road? That's like the last thought he had to have before he crashed into it. What the hell's that?
So and then you call the next display?
Yeah. And then Gros would, pick up and say, yeah. I mean, it only took 45 seconds to do the story, but old Seattle U fans might remember that one time in the second half of the game against, it's Rio Grande Valley State Technical Teachers College or something. I don't know. It's a classic whack team. And in the middle of that, we're telling a story about a stupid idiot in New Mexico trying to elude capture by the police. So I knew Dave would like that. Dave was always down for having fun on the air. I mean,
that's awesome. Thank you.
That's I love the best part. Yeah, that was a fun time.
All right. So everybody out there, watch the Gasman, Mike Gastineau, and Gros on Puckett's. Where do we find Puckett Show on YouTube?
Well, it's the Puckett Worldwide Network. Actually, Puck just distributes this for us and handles any lawsuits. It's available everywhere. It's on Apple, Spotify. There's a version of it on YouTube each week that we use to promote it online. It's on podcasts podcast services I've never heard of because I guess there's a million different ways. So it's on anything we get a podcast, you can get it. We have been downloaded and enjoyed in 18 foreign countries. Now, I have no idea how the hell that happened because we've only done it since April and we don't promote it all that much. We're worldwide. We are considered to be the most downloaded podcast in the world. Until somebody can really prove that wrong, we're going to keep saying it.
Awesome.
You're famous in Holland, right?
We're big in Bogota.
Big in Bogota, yes.
Yeah.
All right. We always end our show on shout-outs.
Yeah.
And that's, just giving a little gratitude out there into the universe to a person, place, or whatever. Soulman, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm going to go with my mother just celebrated her 83rd birthday a couple days ago. So happy birthday, Mom. I love you. Thank you for everything.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. And I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to my son, Vincent, who got me tickets to the Bananas tomorrow. So this will be great to hang out with family. Gasman, would you care to give a
Yeah,
shout out?
it's funny. I thought about this a while back when I know I was coming on the show, and I've got, if it's okay, and I may even forget somebody, but I want to give actually 7 shout outs. My first shout out's to Matt Paige, the producer, because producers do an incredible amount of work. And I purposely didn't mention these people when I was talking earlier about the KJR glory days, but shout outs to our guys, Matt Muller and Brian Lambert, Pat Haller, Jay Garza, Kevin Shockey, Terry Reed, the big right-hander or big left-hander, I can't remember which one he was, but these guys were behind the scenes geniuses, and they helped us so much over the years, and they never got the attention or the credit or the money they deserved, and I love every one of them, and I'm in touch with all of them still a little bit, not as much as I wish. But the producers always, and I was a producer when I first got to KJR, so I know from what I speak a little bit. It's an incredible amount of work that gets done that can get forgotten. So shout outs to all those guys.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week with our very special guest, the Gasman, Mike Gastineau. And on behalf of the Soulman, Brian Solack, and our producer, Matt Paige, I'm Abraham DeWeese, and we'll see you guys on the Seattle Sports Senior Podcast next time.